I woke up and started my day with a brisk, cold shower. My feet traversed the oak staircase, down to the kitchen, where I only had time to scrounge together some eggs, and then I headed to work. I got off my shift at 5 p.m., and then I made my way to get something to eat from Chick-fil-A. I got a chicken sandwich and a milkshake, and then I made my way home after that. I got home and I let my dog out. I got out some leftovers from the other night to make dinner, and I loaded up my PC. I play a lot of video games to relax. I basically play in my free time, like before I go to bed. The next day, I only got called into work for a couple of hours, which was nice, because I was super tired. After I got home, I went up to my room to play some guitar, and just jam out for a little bit. I got pretty bored of that soon, so I just turned on my Xbox in the living room and put my feet up to play my favorite game for a little while. It was getting pretty late by this point, so I threw a Netflix show on to fall asleep watching. It was around midnight at this point and I was pretty sleepy. I think I dozed off pretty soon after that. But I was woken up a little while later by some type of sound. I couldn't make out exactly what it was because I was half asleep, but it definitely woke me up. It was pretty loud and I thought it came from out front of my house. It was pretty dang close anyway. It was like a light, high-pitched sound. Almost like someone was playing a violin with a piece of rusty scrap metal outside of my window. I didn't really think much of it at the time. I was half asleep and I didn't really care at the time, so I just went back to sleep. I woke up at around 11 in the morning, and I felt like absolute crap. I felt like I was hungover, which was odd because I had had nothing to drink the night before. I had a horrible headache, and a slight ringing in my ear. I went to the medicine cabinet, grabbed 2 Tylenol out of the bottle and took them. A little while after that, my headache started to calm down, and the ringing eventually stopped. I had to have had 2 cups of coffee at this point, not only because I felt awful, because I'm definitely a coffee addict. There's no doubt about it. I'm a total caffeine fiend, because it really helps my focus. Thankfully, I wasn't scheduled to work until later that day, but I was going to see how I felt about working later. I was mostly waiting to see if I was even up for it. Something about that day felt off, as if some presence was watching my routines as a play upon a stage. I was alone, except for Gracie, but it felt like I was being watched. I was restless, and I just didn't want to be in the house anymore. I thought that maybe it was because I wasn't feeling good earlier, so I thought maybe some fresh air would do me some good. I got my dog's leash and loaded us up in the car, and took my Gracie for a walk to the park. I thought once I got back, I would feel better from just getting some fresh air. We walked in the park for almost an hour, and while I was there, I discovered something strange. I was walking Gracie on a path in the woods which I hadn't tread recently, but I could remember taking it in the near-distant past. All of a sudden, my dog started freaking out and growling to the left of me. I looked over to see what she was barking at, but I couldn't see anything. It was totally out of character for her, as I had never seen her act so defensively before. I was sure that she had definitely either seen or could sense something out there that I couldn't. This piqued my curiosity, so I decided to investigate. I walked off the path, letting her lead me. Gracie was pulling the leash so hard that I tripped a couple of times. She was choking herself, just trying to get there. I was walking for what seemed to be forever, until we finally got to where she had been leading me. It was in the middle of the woods, but above me was a huge, circular clearing in the trees, which was super random, because there were trees all around except in this one circle. On the ground, there was nothing but grass, but it was growing in a very weird way, in this almost hexagonal-shaped area. It didn't look very natural at all, and my dog was now ripping up the grass, digging for something. There was something under there, and she was going to find it. Everything that came next happened so fast. Gracie had dug up what looked like a bone. It was this dirty, yellowish-white stick, and I grabbed it out of Gracie's mouth. I then examined it further, and then realized that maggots were festering inside, surely making a meal of whatever marrow was left. One even crawled onto my hand, and at that point I did my best Derek Jeter impression and threw the bone halfway across the field. I yelled at Gracie not to go after it. I then started jogging back to the path, where Gracie and I ran straight back to my car and drove home. I was just disgusted at what I saw, but I was also very curious about why there was a relatively large bone buried in the woods. I didn't know it then, but this was only the beginning. I didn't get much sleep that night, because I was trying to understand it all. The odd circle in the middle of the woods with no trees in that one area. The bone that belonged to a large animal that was buried. I wanted to go back and maybe do a little investigating so I could really see what was happening. It was around 1 in the morning at that time, and I heard a large whoosh come over my house, almost like an airplane flying over. You know how if you stand on the ground and a jet flies by, flying low? Well, that was the sound that came over my house. I was startled from brainstorming ideas of what could be out in the woods when the loud sound went over my house. I got right up without blinking an eye and I headed downstairs. I hopped in my car and I flew down my street towards the park. I was 2 streets away from the park at a stop sign when I saw something in the air above the woods. It looked large and black and I couldn't make out many details, but there was a light underneath, and it was shining down on something that I couldn't quite see. I quickly made my way towards it, trying to keep an eye on it while driving at the same time. Nobody was out this late at night, and the street was mostly dark with a few flickering streetlights. I parked my car in the park's parking lot and I got out. I didn't have much on me except for my phone, which I had in hand, and I turned the flashlight app on to see by. I was on the same path that I was on earlier, and all of a sudden, I started to hear this chanting. It almost sounded like some kind of ritual chant, like the kind those Gregorian monks do, but it sounded oddly pleasant. The chant almost sounded like a choir filled with beautiful voices. I didn't want to disturb whoever was making the sound, and I didn't know what else to do, so, forgetting why I was there in the first place, I started to head back. I had gotten back to my car when I saw that thing in the sky again. It was almost hovering over me for a second, and the next time that I looked back up at it, it just disappeared. It was there 1 second and gone the next. It was like something out of a movie, but this was real and right in front of my face. I hopped in my car and quickly sped off. I got to my house and I went right to my bed. I made sure all of my doors were locked first though, because I was pretty frightened. I had no idea what I had seen, so I tried forgetting about it and just falling asleep. I don't know how much sleep I got that night, but I woke up at around 1. Knowing I wouldn't be getting any more sleep anyway, I went online. I was researching the flying thing that I saw in the sky to see if anyone saw the same thing. I quickly realized that what I saw that night was a UFO. The way it acted and how it defied physics added up. It hovered without moving, and then flew away within microseconds. No man-made thing could do what that thing did. My brain then sparked to the second thing that I had witnessed. The chanting. I messaged a couple of my online buddies about what I saw, and they suggested that it was some type of cult. I told them about how I saw the circle in the middle of the woods and the hexagon-shaped grassy area, and they sent me this article on a nearby cult ritual that took place back in the 80s, where they had sacrificed a little boy. It was all over the paper back then, and whispered about around town. If you lived here, you would know about this story. There was speculation about if this cult was still functioning, or if it was even still around today. Most people thought that all the members had either died out or moved on. So I was sitting here thinking to myself about how I just found this strange cult that nobody knows about. Now I really wondered if the UFO was connected to this strange cult. I tried to go about my day like usual. I went grocery shopping and ran a couple of other errands. While I was out, I saw this really cool laser, which was green like the kind of tactical laser you use in the military. I got it for around $50 because I'm into that type of weird stuff. I wanted to use it the next time that I went out to explore the woods, and maybe to mess around with a couple of my neighbors. Nothing odd happened that week until Saturday. This was when I saw something that I never should have seen. It was Saturday night around 3 in the morning. The moon was full and the wackos were out. You know what they say about the full moon and the crazies? Well, tonight, that was the truth. I couldn't help myself but to explore the dark and spooky woods. I really wanted to know where that beautiful chant was coming from. The way I would describe it would almost be like a siren's calling. A siren is a mythical creature that would lure in unknowing sailors to their death by their enchanting song. It was like this, but a choir all in unison, together chanting the song. I still can't describe it in words, but I needed to find the source of it, and I was going to. So I was walking around on and off the path until I came across where I had witnessed it last. I saw a dimly lit flame far ahead of me in the woods. I couldn't make much out around it though, because of the trees and brush around me. I started to make my way over to it, watching my steps so I wouldn't alert anyone to my presence. If I was going to see what was happening, I would need to do it secretly and silently. I thought I knew what I was getting myself into when reading those articles online. This was a cult where they did rituals to someone, or something, for God knows what reason. I could feel my adrenaline start kicking in just to thinking about what I might see. For me, the danger just added to my excitement. It was like a key to my own personal door of blissfulness. I believe that once you aren't afraid of death and the unknown, then you can unlock the real joy of life. Some might say that I'm a thrill seeker, but I like to call it my addiction. When I am in a situation that I shouldn't be in, I feel as if I am whole. I break through a threshold of right and wrong, and the reward is stimulation to my mind. It might sound a bit crazy to you, but aren't we all a bit crazy in some ways? Anyways, as I was creeping up on this fire, I saw multiple people around it. I ducked down in the brush trying to camouflage myself as best as I can. I was glad that I thought to wear dark clothes that night. It really helped me to camouflage myself better in the dark woods. I started to listen to what these people were saying. I was probably 30 yards away at this point, and they began to chant that song, and it filled the air with this almost joyous feeling. I felt good just listening to it. It wasn't scary, and it didn't make me feel like I was in danger. I was just oddly at peace. I continued to watch to see what they were going to do next. They started to switch from the chant to a constant repetition of this one word, which seemed to be some type of possibly ancient language that I didn't recognize. They repeated this one word over and over again. I had no clue what would happen next, but then they doused the fire in gasoline, shooting embers up into the moonlit sky. All of a sudden, I remember seeing someone bring some type of squealing animal out. The creature had to be in pain because of the cries that this animal was making. They laid it on the ground and sprinkled it with some sort of dust while continuing the chanting. I saw one of the members take a large knife that was glowing red from the fire. He took the knife and sank it right into the animal's neck, spewing blood everywhere, as the poor thing cried out one last time. And then they took the lifeless corpse of the animal and threw it into the raging fire in the middle of the circle. It caught pretty quickly, and suddenly a putrid smell rushed my nose. It was the smell of rotten flesh before boiling. They had all begun to chant louder and louder, all rising up, stretching their arms and lifting their hands to the sky, while they were all reaching for something. I was in shock of what I just saw, but I wasn't scared. My adrenaline now was pumping so fast through my veins that I could feel it. I knew that I had to get out of there before the sunrise, which would be soon. It was almost 5 a.m. at this point. The sun would be coming up and revealing my position within the hour. Out of nowhere, they all stopped, and that made me nervous. It was dead quiet to the point where you could hear a pin drop. I heard distant birds chirping, and a couple crickets here and there. I then felt something slither across my leg. This made me jump a little, because I wasn't too fond of snakes, but I knew I still needed to remain calm. As I moved my leg, a branch cracked underneath me. At this point, it was still dead quiet, and I knew that someone had to have heard that. I looked up to where the ritual was taking place. I peeked my head over the brush and saw someone looking directly at me. And then, as if the rest of the world quit existing, it was me and this cult member eye to eye, about 30 yards apart. There were so many thoughts going through my mind at the time, but the one that stood out the most was, run. I stood up and with my adrenaline-pumped legs, ran as fast as I could back to the path. I was pretty muddy from laying down on the dirt for the last hour and I looked like crap. I wanted to look back to see if anyone was chasing after me, but I was too focused on getting to my car and getting the heck out of the park. I got back to my car, clicking the unlock button on my keys multiple times before it opened, and finally got in the driver's seat. I locked my doors and I turned the engine on. It was still fairly dark out at this time and my car lights were on. The lights were pointed right towards where I just ran from. It was foggy, but I could make out an abnormally tall man with some type of mask on in the distance. The man was standing on the path holding something in his hands. I tried to make out what it was, and it looked like it could have been a baseball bat with nails in it. I put my car in reverse and sped out of there trying to make sense of what had just happened. The rest of the day I just sat on my bed thinking. I sat there for hours just trying to understand what I had saw. I knew that I saw a cult doing a ritual. I wondered what that man would have done to me if he ever caught up to me. Knowing me, despite the events that had happened that night, it wouldn't stop me from exploring even more. That was yesterday. I went to Walmart today and bought some motion-activated cameras and some other kinds of trail cameras, like the kind that hunters use. They take pictures every few minutes. They also have night vision too. All the videos and pictures that are taken on these cameras will be sent directly to my phone via an app. I plan on setting these cameras up where the ritual had happened. There's a chance that I'll get nothing back, because the cultist might go somewhere else. Otherwise, I plan to record them doing whatever it was that they were doing. Either way, I'm planning on setting these up later today while it is still light out, and I'll report back with what I get. Update. I just got back from setting everything up and everything is good to go. I can access the live feed from my cell phone, which is definitely going to come in handy. I also went back to where Gracie found that bone to see if I could find anything else. The last time I was there with my dog, I ran off in a hurry. While I was looking around, I found a piece of paper that was pretty ripped up laying on the ground. It was pinned down under a rock, so it wouldn't be blown away from the wind. I started to try and make out what was written on it. I could only make out a few sentences. Here's what it said. The blood of the little one is forever sacred. We bless our sacrifice with the ashes of our past. Unison is all and all is forever. At the end, there is some ancient language and I tried looking up what it meant. After a few Google searches, I discovered that it was in Greek, and it meant, Hail Leader, as in the one who they sacrificed to. I found it amusing that the language that they were using was Greek. I reasoned that this cult must stem all the way back to ancient Greece. It was around 9 p.m. now, and I was preparing myself for the night. Before I had left the woods, I made sure that when I walked in front of where I placed the cameras, that they would all take my picture. The cameras worked just like they should, with very high quality pictures. The only thing I was worried about was if it would be able to make out any pictures that were taken in the dark. There was a night vision mode on the camera, so I hope that it doesn't make the quality unbearable. I bought this one specific camera that had this really high-tech thermal lens. It takes a picture if it detects body heat, so nobody and nothing that is warm-blooded could pass by it without getting their picture taken. For what this whole situation is, I think I am prepared pretty well. I don't really have a plan B if something goes wrong, so I guess I'll keep this post saved on my computer. This way, if something bad happens to me, or I go missing, then whoever finds this will know what was happening at the time. I made myself some dinner, and put some Netflix on to make time go by faster until it was time to leave. I planned on leaving around 2 a.m., and to be near the park just watching the cameras on my phone. I was a decently patient person, so I could sit there for hours and wait until something happens. After watching a couple of episodes of my favorite show, I got up to go to the bathroom. My bathroom has a window that you can see my backyard from. I was just doing my business when I thought I heard something rustling around out back. I peeked through the blinds from my bathroom and I didn't see anyone. I washed my hands and I headed downstairs to turn the outside lights on. I had a way better angle now to view the whole backyard. I turned the lights on, but I didn't see anything then either. I started to chalk it up to my mind just playing dumb tricks on me, because of what I would be doing that night. I turned the lights back off, and all of a sudden, I could see this shadowy figure that was far back at the edge of my fence. It was just standing there, apparently doing nothing. I closed my eyes, holding them shut for a long moment before I opened them again. Because maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me. When I opened my eyes again, it was still there. The figure was solid black and unusually tall. I would say that it had to be at least 7 feet tall. I turned my lights back on and it instantly disappeared. It was almost 1 a.m. at this point, but I felt compelled to leave early. I made sure all of my doors were locked and I headed to my car. Tonight was just getting started. I got into my car, put my keys in the ignition, started the engine, and I pulled out to my driveway. I headed to the parking lot of a closed coffee shop that was nearby to the woods. I turned my car off and plugged my phone in to charge it. I loaded up the camera app to see what was currently going on, and there was nothing. What a surprise, I thought. I'm not too sure how long I waited, but it had to have been a few hours before something caught my interest. A notification popped up saying, "Camera 1 has activity. Click here for details." I clicked the notification and I pulled the feed up. I couldn't make anything out, so I turned the night vision mode on. As I turned this mode on, I could see to the far left of the screen 2 tiny, glowing eyes. I tried zooming in, but it wouldn't let me. I swiped over to my other cameras to try to make sense of what I was seeing. Camera 2 was the same, but now there was double the eyes. You know how a cat's eyes glow in the dark? Well, it was the same thing, but it had to have been 7 feet in the air. I went to my third camera and I could finally make out a person. They had to be wearing some kind of dark colored robe, because I couldn't make out any features on it. It also had that weird mask on. It appeared to be some type of animal skull with sticks coming out of it. This thing was wearing an animal skull on its head. And then I remembered I had my thermal camera. I quickly pulled up the video feed and clicked the scan area option. This was the oddest thing, because it should have lit up like a Christmas tree in shades of red. But it was actually quite the opposite. These things were as cold as ice. No high temperature was recorded. I only knew where they were because their bodies were outlined in the cool blue color for temperatures 40 degrees and below. As I was focusing on this, something else caught my eye. The temperature meter lit up in the middle of the circle. It was the fire, and the temperature meter was the highest that it could get. The ritual was beginning. This didn't make any sense at all. If they were human, it would be reading above 98 degrees, but these things in dark robes were colder than ice. The meter doesn't read below 40 degrees, so I only can assume they had ice water for blood. I looked at the clock and saw that it was 4 a.m., and shit was now getting real. My curiosity was beyond peaked at this point. And then out of nowhere, something lit up the camera with a bright light. I couldn't see anything but this large, super bright light. I switched over to my thermal camera to see what it was reading. Above 200 degrees Fahrenheit. This was some crazy stuff. The huge light, which I still have no clue as to where it came from, was hotter than that fire. I had only been looking at this light for a minute when I started to get error warnings from the apps. The error is red. Camera non-functional. Please reset. I was really curious now that all my cameras weren't working because of the heat. This huge ass light from the sky melted my cameras, and somehow these people are still alive. This was impossible, It had to be a mistake of some kind, an equipment malfunction of some kind maybe, because if this light was hotter than the fire, then shouldn't it kill those things? I was on my way over to the park and that's when it hit me. The light was from that UFO I saw earlier in the week. That was the only explanation that I could come up with. I had just gotten to the park and I parked my car in the lot. I felt the adrenaline starting to slowly course its way through my body. I was moments away from seeing what was going on in the middle of the woods. I was walking on the path, and I slowly began to see this very bright, exposing light. It looked like a spotlight, but was shining directly in my face. I was so fascinated and curious as hell to see what it was. It was still hovering over where the ritual was taking place. I crept my way down into the brush and that's when I saw him. He was wearing this dark, raggy-looking robe, that large animal skull mask on his head, and his bright blue piercing eyes. When I tell you those eyes stared through your soul, I mean it. It was obvious to me that these cult members weren't human. The way they did everything so in unison without missing a beat. The way they walked with their long legs. Most of the members were at least 7 feet tall or so. The tallest one was probably 8 feet, with these long, inhuman arms. The way they stretched and morphed was unnerving. I saw him bend down and it almost looked like he broke his arm, and then snapped it back into place without flinching. I found all of this absolutely fascinating. Every bit of it pumped more adrenaline through my veins and into my brain. I was feeling amazing but also killer focused. I was now on a task to get a picture of this UFO. I took my phone out and I brought the camera app up. I didn't blink once and I zoomed in on the light. The dang light was so bright it wouldn't focus for 1 second. I held the focus to sustain it, and it started to clear at this point when I saw him. He looked over towards me and didn't move. He just stood there without breathing, staring at me. This thing, this monstrosity, not even 20 feet away from me, was staring through me with those piercing blue, unnatural eyes. I had no clue what to do at this point, so I took the picture and I bolted. When I thought that I couldn't have ran faster, I was overcome by my fight or flight instinct of, I know I'm going to die, and I ran faster than ever. I began to hear multiple voices of them yelling in this deep, ancient dialect. It was unlike anything I had ever heard before. I was running on the path at this point when I felt this horrible stomach cramp. The cramp was accompanied by that familiar piercing headache and a dull ringing in my ears. My survival instincts kicked into overdrive, screaming at me to get to my car. A few blurry moments later and I got back to the parking lot. I already had unlocked my car, so I jumped in and turned my engine on faster than I ever had before. I got out of there, leaving skid marks behind me, and then while I was driving down the road, I felt an intense sense of relief and safety. I was safe. For now, at least. But that is it, isn't it? I have no clue whether or not I'll be alive in the next few days. I've decided to put my house up for sale and legally change my name. I've already quit my job, and I'm ready to leave this crappy town behind. I'll be posting this document of my experience with this cult. I just hope they don't find me. Or maybe they already have. The reason I say that is because I've had some weird stuff happen to me recently. While I was going to my local grocery store the other day, I saw something strange. I was coming out of the store while looking at my phone, and all of a sudden, it was a notification from the camera app. You see, I obviously never went back there. I thought that the notification had to be a glitch, since I knew the dang cameras were all apparently destroyed. It said, "Camera 1 has activity. Click here for details." I clicked on it, and what I saw shocked me. It was a child, all alone with only a hat on his head. And then one of those things wearing a dark robe came over, blocking the camera's view. I couldn't see what was happening, because he was standing in front of it at this point. My stomach sank just thinking about what I was about to witness, but then it just went black. The screen cut out and that dang message popped up. "Camera non-functional. Please reset." What happened next is why I'm leaving town and never coming back. I began to feel this weight fall over my chest, like an elephant was sitting on me. And then that ringing in my ear started, just like the night I ran away from that thing. I then saw my phone start to glitch out, and it started to get extremely hot. I mean, like when you leave it in the sun all day hot. It began giving a message saying, "High temperature alert. Please let phone cool before using again." I almost couldn't hold it because it was so hot. I just put it in my pocket thinking, hoping it was all a stupid glitch. And then my phone began playing a song at full volume. It was the beautiful song that the cult members were chanting in the woods. I neither had made a recording of their chant, nor did I find it anywhere on the web. My phone had accessed this audio from some external source, but only God knows where it came from. This is what made me tip. This was the last straw for me, and I was no longer curious about this messed up ancient extraterrestrial cult. I shut my phone off and I threw it in the grocery store trash can. I'm writing all of this on my new phone while sitting on a plane awaiting takeoff. I got a solid cash offer on my house, and we settled on a very lush price, so Gracie and I are gone. I'll probably wind up somewhere in Europe. Maybe I'll own a business, like a vineyard off of the Bay of Naples. Maybe I'll find something in the Maldives Islands right off the coast of India. I will tell you this much, whoever may be reading this. I'm about to fly somewhere where I can hopefully begin a new life without this constant fear of these inhuman things that are lurking in your town. I saw something that I shouldn't have seen, and maybe went too far exploring it. I've experienced a lot of my life and I don't care what people say. I know I'm not in control of what happens next, and I've already accepted it. I'll either eventually live out my life somewhere nice and warm, or these supernatural things will find me and end my life one day. I wish I still had that picture I had taken as proof, but the light had melted the camera lens on my now discarded previous phone, and the picture had ended up as a distorted mess anyway. I don't know how they might end me, or what they might do to me. I just hope this message, this warning, gets out to the public. There are otherworldly things out there, whether or not you believe it. It's real and I have seen it with my own eyes. Goodbye now, and wish me luck on wherever I wind up going. Remember to be safe out there, and live life to its fullest, because you never know what could be out there, just waiting for you.